Fight Mike here. Today we're going to be matchmaking the UFC White House card that has been scheduled and announced for 2026. I believe that it's going to be around the July 4th, so I'm going to put fights on the card that actually make sense for the scenery, will be probably available for that time, and actually achievable. I've seen so many concept cards with like Conor McGregor in the co-main event, or like Sean O'Malley as a main card opener. And budget-wise, that will never happen. So I'm going to create something that they can realistically actually make, and make it so it's like a blockbuster pay-per-view. We haven't had one of those in the US since maybe like UFC 300. So I'm going to make a pay-per-view that's sort of on the level of the pay-per-views in the Middle East. Starting off with the main event, I've got Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. I know that people are going to think that Conor versus Chandler should be the main event, but I think that Jones re-entering the testing pool is like a legit step to actually fighting. Whereas Conor's been talking about fighting for 3 years, and even if he entered the testing pool, last time he did that, he did not fight. So I don't expect him to ever come back. And the thing is that time-wise, July next year is probably when Jones was looking to fight anyway. If he wasn't looking to retire, he did not want to fight in November this year. He wanted to parade around the world with his heavyweight title. So I think that this time-wise would actually be good, because he can have the next 6 months to just mess around, do absolutely nothing with his life. And then he can come in a year's time and fight this fight against Tom Aspinall. By that time, Aspinall's probably had 2 more fights, more tape for Jones to study. And if you're going to do this as an event in the White House, you need a blockbuster main event. And no one on the roster really... No one American, on the roster is really giving you that. So if it's not like a Conor versus Chandler, it has to be Jon Jones as the main event. And I genuinely think that this is probably the most likely fight for the main event. If Tom Aspinall loses any of his next 2 fights, 100% this will be made. But even with Tom Aspinall, I think that this probably is the most likely. There's not that many Americans that can fight for a title anymore. Most of the guys in the top 5 as well have lost their shots. So it's like... You need someone who's like a bona fide like main eventer from America to actually headline this thing. You can't have Pereira versus Ankalaev or something headline this. So the one thing I could see is if Pereira actually loses to Ankalaev, I could see them making like a Jones-Pereira for a BMF belt, or like a random catchweight fight so Jon can fight without it being Aspinall. But all in all, I hope that it ends up being Aspinall. I think that there's a good chance that it does end up that. Moving on to the co-main event, we've got Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya. A lot of people are assuming that this fight's going to be in Australia, but I actually highly doubt that. I saw an interview with Adesanya recently that he stated his next fight is probably not going to be Strickland. And I also don't think Strickland wants to keep fighting in Australia. He says every time how much he hates the taxes and how much he prefers to fight in America. And even then, his audience is best in America. He wouldn't be well used to be fighting in Australia or Canada, where he's usually put. So he needs to be in Australia to get the main fan base of his. And I think time-wise, even though both of them want to probably get in there before the end of the year, they'll probably keep him sidelined until this event, or they'll have like an intermission fight where they're both fighting down in the rankings. Honestly, it's probably the perfect fight to have in the White House at this point, because if we're having a White House event, we need American fighters that are constantly big-upping America, talking about how much they love it, and cutting like a American promo similar to the one that Zhang Weili cut for China after UFC 300. So we need something similar to that. We need some fighters who are going to do that for America. And Strickland's that guy. For this event, if you were to have Strickland on there as well, you need someone who's going to actually talk shit, someone who's actually going to bring some heat to the matchup. And honestly, there's no one else in the top 10 that is really going to try and press Strickland in press conferences. So we need clips for this event. Like, we're not going to see anything interesting between a Strickland versus Cannonier rematch, like trash talking like wise. We're never going to see anything. Whereas we might get some like big moments between the two. And it would just be a high like value matchup, especially if both of them can get a win against some lower level opponents and then come up against each other again. Then either side can be like, oh, the resurgence of their career, and we can really hype off that. Whereas at the moment, it's sort of like, it's like the biggest losers. I know if anyone's in Australia, they've seen the Fat People show, but this is sort of like that. It's like these two guys who are on losing streaks just coming up against each other to see who the worst loser is at the moment, who's further down the track of being close to retirement. So I would prefer them to both get a win and then fight at this card next year. Moving on to the feature fight, I have Sean O'Malley versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I think this fight makes a lot of sense, like, especially if you think that both of these guys aren't going to get given each other for, like, the October pay-per-view where Umar's scheduled to fight next. I think Umar's going to be fighting Song Yadong at that Saudi Arabia card in October, and I think Sean will probably fight Figgy, like, in the December or January pay-per-view. I think that Sean's not going to be fighting anyone else in the top 5. I don't think he's getting a rematch with Pyer. I think both of these guys are going to be put in the position where they can be denied a title shot if needed. Because neither of these guys deserve a title opportunity if they just get one singular win, and especially with the wins that they'll get off their next few fights. So, especially if Jan beats Marcus McGee, then he'll be on a 3-fight winning streak. So if Sean O'Malley beats like a Figgy or Umar beats a Song Yadong, they don't deserve it over Pyer Jan. So I think that this is like a perfect feature fight for this one, just because Sean has said multiple times, unless he's fighting for a title, it has to be a 3-rounder. And may as well throw him on a stacked pay-per-view if you are giving him a 3-rounder. There's no point in throwing him on like a mid to weak pay-per-view just because he's not going to get any shine in that spot. I don't know if you remember UFC 289. I think it was Nunes' last fight against the lady that got cut really badly at UFC 306. I'm blanking her name. I'm not going to remember until I click end the video. But it sort of will feel like Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush in the co-main. Like, although it was a big-ish fight at the time and felt like the main event of the card, just because it was 3 rounds, it just wasn't as hype. And I don't think that you're getting that much hype off this being a co-main event of a pay-per-view, especially being 3 rounds. So I think you have to put it on a stacked fight card as like a feature fight, sort of like how they put the Sean O'Malley versus Pyer when they fought at UFC maybe 269, and it was a stacked pay-per-view. They need to do that with Sean O'Malley's next fight. Just because he's not fighting for a title doesn't mean that we throw him to the back of the line. So we need to put him on this card in a 3-rounder. It would bring a lot of hype to the card. You would have a wide variety of Americans tuning in because you got the old head fans for Jon Jones, you got the redneck Strickland fans, and now you've got the late teenaged audience of Sean O'Malley to cover off all bases. Maybe you just throw on a Bo Nickel in the prelims to get the wrestling dads. So it's perfect to throw this fight on. And it's a must to get Sean O'Malley on the card to face Umar, just because the build-up between the two would be good. It would have like that Conor vs. Khabib feel without the title. And I know they probably intended to have this fight as like for the belt after Merab sort of retires, but with Merab reigning supreme, we need to get some of these high-level matchups made before they just get a rematch at the belt. So it keeps the whole division moving. Merab's not getting opponents who are like on a 1-fight winning streak, so they mean a lot more on his resume, and we can at least see some improvements from both Sean and Umar on this fight card, and it would just bring so much hype to this. Moving on to the 4th fight along, though, I've got Robocop versus Joe Pyer. I needed to put one fight on this card that wasn't costing over $600,000, even though they would make that back easily. But I think this is a really good matchup. Both of these guys, in the meantime, need to face some ranked opponents like an Abus Magomedov or a loser of Brendan Allen and Vittori. But after those fights have happened, give both of these guys those fights, and then they need to be faced up against each other. This is the mirror matchup we've all been waiting for, and I just think that the fans haven't seen either of these fighters in like a mirror matchup or in a matchup that will really show how good they are. And I think anyone who knows the fight game at all will be so hyped for this fight. You won't hear, if you see like a lot of unranked fights or like lower ranked fights, people will be complaining that they're on the pay-per-view. Whereas this one, these guys could be unranked and people are not saying a single thing about them being on the pay-per-view because they'll expect a first round KO or like a meaty hooks war where they're just throwing ham at each other the whole time. And it's also a big spotlight for the winner of that fight because whoever wins is going to get a flatline KO and the stadium's going to go, or the White House is going to go wild for it. So it's a good momentum fight to keep the flow of the fight card, making sure that there's good matchups one after the other and it's not too expensive. So I threw it on the main card. Finally, for the opener of the main card, I've got Colby Covington versus Michael Chandler. This will be the fight for America's least favorite bootlicker. I think that this fight gets made, and neither of them will have won a fight or even fought a fight since then. They'll probably be unranked by this time, and they better be unranked, especially if neither of them have fought. They need to be unranked by this time. And if this gets matched, as soon as the fight starts, they become unranked. I don't care. But honestly, this is the best fighter that either fight could get. I bet that they'll be both waiting out because, like, Chandler's going to get offered roofie soon. They're not going to give him, like, a Moicano. So they're not going to get any unk matchups that they would actually find favorable. It's not like Colby's going to get, like, a Stephen Thompson or, like, a Gilbert Burns. He's going to get, like, a Jeff Neal or a Carlos Prates, someone who's easily going to smoke him. Both of them, they're going to have to turn down some fights to get this one. So I feel like they have to hold out hope for this matchup, otherwise their careers are over. And honestly, I think that this will probably get made just because the build-up will be amazing. Chandler will be constantly faking the nice guy. Colby will be calling him out for it every step of the way. And this fight will be pretty good. I think if you're putting some unk on unk matchups, they have to stylistically match. So Chandler's a bit of the shorter guy. He can defend takedowns okay. Colby's takedowns look like they're at half speed nowadays. So we're probably going to see a mainly standing fight. And we're just going to see Chandler wading forward with his hands down, eating punches, throwing his overhand left and right on a really slow Colby Covington with a still good chin. He's going to take the shots. They're both going to get cut. They got tons of scar tissue. And for a UFC in the White House match made, this is literally the perfect fight for it. You'll see some, like, pillow punches from Colby Covington landed on Chandler and then, like, a 360 roundhouse kick. And then you'll see Chandler just spin Colby's head back with, like, a no setup overhand. Like, it's just going to be a scrappy war between these two unks. And we'll at least have someone to brutally hate on. And someone can save a little bit of face and get a little bit of star power and notoriety after winning this fight. But let me know what you think of this match-made UFC White House card. Let me know what you think of it in the comment section below. As always, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.